dress like this don't do anything wrong. The truth is, it's the guys that dress like this are doing almost all the bad stuff.
Right, and I always tell people, when you see somebody selling their body for money in the street, it's obvious. They're showcasing themselves. The prostitution is a visible aspect. When someone sells their soul for money, how obvious is that? Because it happens every single day, as much as people who sell their body.
And that's why
they do more harm to American citizens, and they do more harm to human beings than anybody else.
And that's why they want to make everybody poor, is so we'll sell out to them.
Right.
They don't want us being independent. Amazing information. I wanted to get, I mean, behind the scenes, though, you said they'll never get rid of the guns, and you said that on air. But, I mean, bottom line, you also talked about drones. My point is, this gun's been used in one crime to rob an armored car. Right. Not this gun, but one back in the 80s. The Barrett 50 cal. Okay.
Why would you need a Barrett in case you send drones to my house?
Yeah, that was the point you made. I wanted you to repeat. But it's larger than that.
Right.
It's a real symbol of freedom. And you make the joke about overcompensating for something. This was so two-man teams, one to spot, as you know, we're saying off air, and then one to deal with light armor. This is a anti-armor weapon. We were shooting through quarter-inch pieces of steel 2 days ago.
Take down a plane with this gun.
But you could also, do all sorts of things just with a can of gasoline. The issue is, it isn't about the can of gasoline or the truck or the gun. It is about the mindset, and more of these guns out there makes it a freer society.
Can I offer something? I mean, I understand your point, and that's a perfectly debatable issue. I know people that would disagree or agree with that as well. But I can offer another rationale. Instead of blaming guns, right, for all the violence in America like people are trying to do now, instead of blaming video games like they're trying to do in Congress, or violent movies, right, how about the fact that this country, this republic,
was born in blood,
has only had 20 years of peace since its inception. Now, I would like to be able to blame this or blame something else, but I think that that's a very nearsighted solution. Just to look at it, yes,
we have a history of piracy.
This does kill people, yes, absolutely. But so did Greek fire. So did a whole lot of other things that people invented and used. So did diseases that were given to indigenous people purposefully. One of the first examples of genetic warfare against indigenous people by Europeans.
That's in the British manual.
And I think, thank you for pointing that out, because this is the point that I'm trying to make. We won't have that critical discussion about how violent our government is and how violent our society is. Blaming it on this is the easiest way out. It prevents you from looking inward and saying, what have I become complicit to in America?
Well, let me say this, because what you say is absolutely on target, but here's the paradox. The United States was the giant, one of the last true freebooting, pirating, piratical, absolute, all, bets are off craziness, where you had all the different native tribes trying to get this tribe to fight with that tribe, and the French and the Spanish and the British and the militias, and really it was a free-for-all. And if you really look at it, a lot of the groups using the same tactics. But the issue is that it was in that age, it was in that time, and if you look at that, there was a lot of murder and death, but it produced incredible wealth. Look at Europe, though. Even more people actually killed by governments and killed by the church and killed by other things, but it was the stagnation. So I'm not saying any of the evil in our history is a good thing or writing it off. I'm saying the quieter evil has gone on in China and in Japan, where if a samurai wanted to test out a sword, he would just chop up a few of his servants, and that was seen as okay. And I'm not attacking the Japanese either. My point is that the history has been skewed and twisted, not to demonize America, not to defend America, but to really not show people what really went on. And I don't even know what the point is, other than that because there's other empires, why did 5% of the world population end up getting half the wealth? Now that's all ending. And I think it was because there was that absolute out-of-control behavior going on where the central powers weren't in control. It allowed more creativity and people to do what they wanted, separating that from all the killing and violence.
Right. I think one thing that people need to realize is empires don't fall apart because they lose wars. We haven't won a war since World War II. We didn't win in Vietnam. I know Korean War veterans that schooled me to the game, and even though I'm not a huge fan of war, I always thank people for their service, because at least they had the courage to go, excuse my language, rather than the people who got 1,200 deferments and have no problem sending young.
Sure, you can respect the individual for what they went through.
But I think the point is that, you know, empires begin to die when people no longer believe in them. I mean, the partial collapse of the Soviet Union was due to the massive amount of cynicism that existed because the government was no longer believable outside of Moscow. In other words, the people that were living in this Siddhartha-like enclosement were like, oh yeah, this is, you know, the free Soviet.
Like Ceausescu.
Right. And then everybody outside was like, are you kidding me? You don't even have on paper what is going on here. Do you realize what's happening in Poland? Do you realize what's happening in Eastern Europe and Romania and all these other places? Do you have any clue? I mean, would you even be able to last for a day there without losing your mind? And I think that that's where we're at right now. The level of cynicism in this country has gotten to the point where people are saying, is there hope left for the Republic? Can we save it? Is it worth saving? And how did we start with this? You know what I mean? And I think the only way we can is, the only way you can stop being an alcoholic, Alex, is to admit you have a problem with alcohol.
I agree.
The only way you can stop being a drug addict is to admit you have a problem with drugs. America needs to confront its mythology, and in the mythology of its inception, the mythology of what it was used for, and I think what hurts Second Amendment proponents are when they deny certain aspects of what the Second Amendment was used for. Was it used to police slaves? Absolutely. Because no one becomes a slave quietly. Do you think the Romans enslaved the Greeks quietly?
No. They use arms.
They had a man called...
But again, you can't blame the weapon. You have to blame the culture and the time.
And that's where people have that escape.
But let me go one further with the whole... Let me go further, though, the whole weapon thing. Did you know, because I kind of got into naval history, and it's the actual charts, you had indentured servitude, and you had the sharecroppers that were basically slaves as well, and you had the slaves all over Europe that didn't get freed in Germany, in some cases until the 1860s. You know, there were slaves in Germany.
Absolutely.
You know, the Hessians, they brought over here to fight us?
Yes, absolutely. The Hessians, they brought 17,000 because the Duke of Hesse had a treaty with the king, and they said, oh, bring them down. Those are the first German settlements in New York.
Exactly, but that was a great brainwashing tool, because these were slaves that owed blood debt to be a soldier, but they were so into it, they were happy to go die. But they kind of said, hey, this looks pretty good, I want to stay here, and ran off. But
when they lost, it was funny because they said 9,000 single German men were like, dude, I do not want to go back to Germany. I love it out here. You know what I mean? I can live with indigenous people, beautiful women. I'm treated like a person. I'm not treated like some part of feudal history. And I think what people don't tend to understand is that Europe has plenty of indigenous societies as well. If you look at the Celts, if you look at the Picts, if you look at, for example, the history between Ireland and England.
Oh, it's all the same story.
They're trying.
Same thing that happened here.
They're trying to.
That's why the West was so good at it, was they'd already done it to themselves. But that's what I'm trying to get at. I don't bring up other forms of slavery to take away from the African slave trade and the stuff that went on with the natives and the sugar canes, because that was some of the most oppressive, because the science had gotten better. My issue is it's used as a way to make people feel bad and have an inferiority complex that their ancestors were slaves. I try to bring up all the other slavery and the impressment onto ships and stuff of poor whites. That was slavery. And listen, did you know that on average, from like 1600 to 1800, on average, about a third of the people would die on each mission to the African slave coast? It wasn't just the Gold Coast blacks, half of them dying on the ship. It was the sailors. That's why you had so many pirates. That was the first ships where it was all black, white, Latin, all that on one ship. That's why they say pirates were the first libertarians. Is that if you really study history, they were all running off because 2 missions, you were dead. But my point is, people don't get how hard the world was. If you smarted off to somebody, they'd say, we're going to the street with a gun or a knife. I mean, it was, what I'm saying is, it was so hard is what I'm ranting about.
I think what people mistake is that in America, the crux of Western civilization, even the medieval monarchies, are based off of Rome, right?
They are, yeah.
And when people look at Rome, they tend to think, oh, wow, it's just like America with these shining buildings and establishments. You forget the organized barbarity of it all.
And it was based on slaves in 50 countries.
This is a society of complete imperialism where one man was considered God. You know what I mean? And his rule was absolute. The emperor, dictated something, and it happened regardless of what the people wanted. The Senate was there for show during the end of antiquity and the beginning of the Roman Empire, and I think that that's what people don't seem to understand. We live in a society now where the idea of checks and balances is practically for show, and it works on a local level. But once we get to a mainstream government,
I agree.
It's entirely built on...
Freedom is ceremonial.
Right.
And that veneer's wearing out. We've got to go to break now. I heard, because they told me, blame it on them, hey, he's got this film coming out. I didn't know it was already out. I saw the trailer before we went on air tonight.
Sure.
Tell us about this work.
Sure.
Tell us about where people can get it. Also, the new album. We're going to play the trailer for the film.
Sure.
And then we're going to come back, and we're almost out of time, do about 10, 15 more minutes with tech, Immortal Technique. Give out the website when we come back. People can find out where your shows are. I mean, I got to say this. I have interviewed quite a few hip-hop people, and I'm not kissing your ass. I think it's true. You are undoubtedly the most informed person of anybody I've talked to by light years.
Thank you, bro.
You know, KRS-One, very informed, super smart guy. I'd say number 2 there. And I'm not saying, oh, wow, within hip-hop, boy, you're really smart. I mean, you've, you know, are up there with, you know, the brain bug, Webster Tarpley. That's his nickname.
Well, at least you didn't say he speaks so well.
Oh, you talking about Obama?
I'm just like, yeah, the Harry Reid thing, right?
Yeah, we were talking about how, because that's what you want to talk about. In fact, when we come back, liberals and the condescension and what they're doing. No, my point is that I wish in hip-hop, you know, that there was more of this.
There are a lot of people who think the way I think, Alex. It's just not conducive to the entertainment business for them.
I'm going to write a note here. Yeah. I'm going to tell secrets of entertainment. I've been told by 2 different people that were high up at MTV that ties into what you just said when we come back. But tell folks about the new DVD, the new film.
New movie directed by my friend Carrie Stewart. The Revolution of Immortal Technique talks about basically being an independent, coming up and learning the business and realizing that, listen, I can be successful at all this, but unless I'm willing to personally sacrifice for the message that I want to put out, and I want to put art before selling out for money, you know, what are the pros and the cons of that? And all the people have advised me.
How long has this been out?
It's been about a year, and it was 6 years in the making. It was
to show my ignorance. I follow some of what you do, but I guess I missed it.
No, it was a sleeper. You know what I mean? It was a great film. It got Cornel West, you know, one of the only black intellectuals that I think has really taken the Obama administration to task. And he famously told the MSNBC hosts that you've sold your soul for White House access.
I want him on. I mean?
You know, Cornel West needs to be on the show. He's someone who's willing to tell the president, you know, when are you going to come from behind some of the proxies and have an honest discussion about what's going on in your own hometown of Chicago?
Hey, did you bring copies so I can watch this tonight?
Yeah, we should have one. We'll send one.
Oh, but I saw the trailer earlier. Well, let's play the trailer for folks right now. Tell them the website where people can get it.
ViperRecords.com, or hit me up at Immortal Tech on Twitter.
Okay, let's go to that trailer right now.
You symbolize the voice of truth all around the world in the name of rap music and hip-hop.
If I was somewhere else simply because of the music I made, then there was nowhere it couldn't take me.
Can I have a platform where I can still boom, loot, tell my truth, or make some money so I can take care of my life? There's a reason the nigga picks this pen up.
Immortal Technique is one of the most dangerous artists in America.
We moved to Harlem in the 80s. I used to get into fights all the time. I didn't realize what the prison industrial complex was. When I began to learn and understand things about the world, I was set free.
Whenever you got awakened, took this journey, fuck, man, I'm glad you did it.
I'm nobody's puppet. I control me.
Repeat after me. Viva la revolución! Viva la revolución! Viva la revolución!
The revolution of Immortal Technique. Wow. And when he talks about, you know, up with the revolution, it's not a communist revolution. It's not a socialist revolution. It's not a fascist, right-wing, left-wing revolution. It is, I guess, a revolution of awakening and to be independent. I haven't seen the film yet, but I intend to. Bummed out that it's been out for a while and haven't seen it. Plus, I'm a free market guy. I probably want to carry it and sell it at the InfoWarsShop.com. That's how we finance ourselves here, with viewers like you that support us and your subscriptions to InfoWarsNews.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. And don't forget, I print the magazine, 100,000 each month, at cost in groups of 10 up to 100. And the February issue is almost sold out, and that's good because February is almost over, and it gets into the attack on the Second Amendment and why the tyrants want your